Hey, uh, good morning, everyone. My name is Debankur, as he mentioned. So I'm going to start with soil health, though, but I'm not going to talk about soil health. I'm kind of delve into soil conservation side. Now, it's too much to cover. I'll go as fast as I can. Two challenges. Agroforestry is not very well known to me. I'm learning. And second, English is not my native language. So please bear with me. So we'll start with regenerative agriculture and agroforestry, right? Now, I told you I am more interested in commercial agriculture or agroforestry just because I believe with economics, it helps to, improve lifestyle, improve a society, a community, and I've been working with regenerative agriculture for some time. I was in Midwest. So the concept really about beyond sustainability, right? I have a very small two-page article on how regenerative agriculture is beyond sustainability. That it cannot target and stop there. You start regenerating and there is no limit. It's infinite. It's like going back in time. Um, and regenerate the landscape, work with the nature, right? So, you know, uh, we take stuff from nature to produce something we like, so we need to give it back. So that's the concept of regenerative agriculture. We keep regenerating resources that we not exploit, utilize. Um, Now there are some core principles, and soil, water, um, ecosystem, environment overall, and we play with all different agents like this all these natural agents, and so we modify them, we manipulate them according to our needs. So it's our duty to make it right. If we use some water, we have to figure out a way how we conserve more water so that I can use next and for generations. Why soil health comes into picture? Because soil is kind of at the boundary of atmosphere and below ground, and soil has filtration system, tunnels, pores where water and air or all the fluids can get in and get out. So soil is kind of it's kind of a at the door. It's taking care what happens above and below ground. And we know how important is below ground because of the microbes, the life that is below ground, and how it helps to move and cycle things, not only carbon, every other element that is required by any life on this earth, right? So see the bolded words, um, function, sustain, quality. This is all we try to make sure that we work around all these different elements of nature when we are farming, when we are ranching, when we are growing trees. We should look at the system, the soil system or the water system, that they function properly so that it can sustain the life forms, different sizes, different dimensions, so that we can improve quality, not only the environment, but our life, right? So there are a lot of different points and principles, but more or less, these five or six are kind of standard principles for regeneration, right? And I'll go to the next slide and we'll see how this reducing soil disturbance, because it's a system, right? If you disturb it too much, you have to figure out a way how you can create the ecosystem back or disturb less. Okay, then livestock integration, right? It always has been animals and plants, they're living together, then we need both of them in a perfect ratio, in a perfect combination, right? Soil covering, some kind of guard, some kind of protection to the soil, so that it doesn't heat up too much, it doesn't erode too much, it can infiltrate as much as water possible. So covering the soil is not just putting some barrier over soil, but also integrate a system between soil and the above ground atmosphere that still helps something to penetrate, and something not to penetrate. So it can be selective. Like plants. Plants let water penetrate in there, but doesn't let wind blow away the friable, loose soil from the top layer of the soil. And if you look at soil health principles given by NRCS, they're kind of same. It's just different terminology we use because we are working with different systems. Now think about the whole system. You probably talk about regenerative system. You talk about soil, just soil, like nerds like me talking about soil all the time. I probably call it, okay, let's talk about soil health. But I know the importance and the impact of soil health on other things too. So all these processes, I'm not going to go in details that I do in my uh, other presentations, but we kind of get the concept. Keep the nature as it is and work with the nature. If we change, we have to change a little bit because, certain things we cannot really work with, and we go there like the steep slopes and, uh, on the mountains when we have to grow food, but you cannot really have nice little flat ground to put irrigation systems and stuff like that. So we have to work with nature. That's the first thing. So keep systems as it is. If we change it a little bit, we have to give it back. And that is regenerative agriculture. Okay. And there are different tools and practices that we generally do, mostly related to agriculture, because that's where it started, because that is probably the major source of income for a large community growing agricultural crops. And then agroforestry kind of integrates some part of the agriculture because there are systems like alley cropping, right? Or strip cropping on a contour or on a steep slope, right? All these processes are kind of integrating agricultural systems to agroforestry, right? But ultimate goal is two. I do not think any system can be sustainable just by thinking about environment. Two E's, environment and economics. Unless you have economics going with it, you cannot take care of environment because everything requires dollars and money. Okay, so all these processes, crop rotation, different crops, because different crops feeds different groups of microbes. Not only that, different crop takes out different kinds of resources at different amounts. So if you grow same crop, you'll exhaust certain kind of nutrients, resources at a larger amount and imbalance the system. So crop rotation, right? Cover crops, protection of the ground. Keep leaving roots. Leaving roots is important. Not, well, dead mulches can work, but living roots are the best because it's the connection. Like I told you, you know, there should be some kind of selectivity. We need to let something in and not let something in. Okay, so there should be a barrier. So living roots with cover crops can do that and also provide protection. Residues, legume crops, right? Oh, so there is the window, but it says legumes, and you can see my fingers, and it's showing some nodules that fix nitrogen with a bacteria, symbiotic bacteria called rhizobia. That's been my PhD research. I have biases towards legumes, so not talk about that. Soil amendments. Sometimes your system is what you got, and you don't have a economically and environmentally feasible way to improve organic carbon, or organic matter, or nutrients. So that's why you need amendments. You have to bring something out of place. I'm saying out of place because sometimes it's synthetic, sometimes it's not synthetic, but both are amendments. You're amending the soil to work with it in such a way that you want, because it's a commercial at the end of the day. I will keep talking about the commercial part of the agroforestry or agriculture overall, just because I believe it's a very, very, very important. And sometimes we forget that. And which is when we devise or when we recommend something, we have to keep up thinking about the commercial. And some of my talk will go around that. Yeah, 10 minutes. So we all know what cover crops do, right? Multiple benefits: protection, weed control, pest control, diversity, perennial forage, for like beneficial insects and birds, and there's so many ways, right? But the basic is something that Chris mentioned a little bit. I'm not going to get into there in details, like carbon sequestration. We hear the term carbon sequestration a lot. Carbon sequestration, the simplest way to do carbon sequestration is growing something green or green and brown. Okay. If you grow something, photosynthesis happens, and that's when you trap carbon, you know, you utilize some water, trap carbon, and there is a sunlight. Arizona, abundant sunlight. More or less, desert Southwest, we have abundant sunlight. We That's for free. Carbon dioxide is free. We are emitting a lot. Um, the only thing that is free, but we don't have lots, it's water. So my next part of the presentation will talk about how we find ways to conserve water and stuff like that. But basically, photosynthesis is the best and easiest way to sequester carbon. You can add as much as organic matter. You can add as much of microbial inoculation. It won't help much because the system moves a different way unless you change the system in such a way that you automatically trap more carbon from atmosphere, utilizing sunlight and water. You are not doing enough. So growing crops is the best way to sequester carbon. Now people will say, oh, but the crops take out a lot of water. Yes, the cycle is needed. Every cycle is needed. We know evapotranspiration is a loss of water, but that is a necessary loss. If we don't have evapotranspiration, we don't have rain clouds, we don't have rain, we don't have water. Because evaporation is going to happen no matter what. If you have temperature, it is going to happen. It's better the trees use it, make it a little bit different. I'm not going there. Sorry. We cannot explain everything there. But evapotranspiration is a necessary evil for desert regions like Arizona, but it is important. So we need to grow crops, and cover crops can do that. Now, there are multiple purposes. Grazing, right? A big part of my research is around how cover crops can be utilized to graze in season and off season, because the forage prices are sometimes very high, and agroforestry is the perfect place. So these sheeps, they're from my agroforestry system in the southeastern part of our state. They have, well, the grasses are not tall enough. They don't get a lot of water from precipitation, but it's cool enough. And they don't have a lot of heads of sheep. They also have cattle, but they have pecan trees, 40 acres. They're grazing in between. All these cycles are happening. The animals are the best cycler of any nutrient, carbon, nitrogen, everything. Everything goes through animal body, animal digestive system. The good thing is the temperature outside changes, but not inside the gut of an animal. So the decomposition, the process that releases those nutrients, can happen inside an animal. So livestock is very important in the setup of cycling of carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, all these elements. A lot of soil amendments, and you will have these slides. So some of the slides I will not discuss a lot, but you will have these slides. If you have any question, please reach out to me. I will explain more. But what I'm trying to say, there are a lot of different kinds depending of your need. You have a system that cannot have one kind of amendment. You can use another kind. So there is no less information there. Biochar, and the photo at the bottom, but it was in windy yesterday. I just applied biochars there, and they're applying biochar today, so I have to run after this. So biochar is being talked a lot. There are certain good things and bad things about biochar. Bad things you see, $20 of carbon kind of blowing to the other field. So good with me because I have a funding to do it, not for the grower. Okay, so. And it is also mixed with compost, because you cannot apply biochar kind of alone in Arizona. It just doesn't have. It is so friable. It's so light, and with compost, it gets some nutrients with it, so it modifies the way the rat how carbon is fixed and utilized and released by the plants that will grow on top of it. Now, biochar can be of different materials, and it's very important what materials we're using because we have a soil that is very high in pH in most of our places. So biochar, some biochars, depending on what source it is from, can be alkaline. So make sure when you use a biochar, you are testing it, you have a product level, and you know it's not going to mess up with your soil pH, because pH is very important. It makes sure how much nutrients your plants are getting. You have too high or too less, your plants are not getting enough nutrients, because the most of the nutrients that are available at the neutral range, pH 7, 6.5 to 7.5, that's where you want to be, the sweet point. Most of our soils don't have that sweet point. That is fine. We keep amending. That's why you need amendments. And yeah, another limitation of biochar is very expensive. Now I know. And when it is expensive, then you always think about the commercial part of it, like how much I'll gain from it. There's not a lot of research done in southern Arizona, but some research have been done in northern. I'm not involved. I was not involved in those research, so I cannot share any data. But what my take on it is, because I spoke with those people, it is a stable carbon source, but it is also tricky how sustainable they are in arid conditions, because water is a big factor how carbon can help us. And if you don't have water, just having biochar, and we don't have a lot of precipitation. So just having biochar may not give us the perfect soil water conservation system. So that is where we have to play with, like how much you should use. Should we use a little over several times, like split application of fertilizers that we do, things like that. And we will be playing with that for some time. Now, soil erosion, okay? This is our big problem. Not much in the south, water erosion is not much, but wind erosion and water erosion. But up north, up elevations in the eastern side also of our state. I'm sorry, I know there are a lot of people from out of Arizona, but I know a little about Arizona, so I know nothing about other states as much. I'm sorry about that. But in Arizona, I go statewide. I have seen um, areas receiving 10, 12 inches of precipitation, and I've seen 3 inches of precipitation. Both are less than what we need, because every place needs as much as we can. So now how we stop them? Because we're talking about regenerative agroforestry, right? How we stop them? We have to figure out a way, and then we need engineers or engineering plans, and that's where this soil conservation methodology, the techniques come up. Now, I know very little, so I'll go very fast. I'm telling you in the beginning. The contours are imaginary, okay? So you have to connect the points with same elevation. So you know where your slopes are, where the peaks are, where the flat levels are, where you can create places to store water and where you cannot. There are modification of contour, but the main idea of contour is you have to make these steepy, slopey lands as productive as possible. So you form in such a way that you don't feed into erosion. Because if you form along the line of the erosion or the slope, you will reduce or feed into the erosion. So what do? You go across, you do perpendicular to the slope, and you stop, you resist the movement of water, and kind of store and give it more time to infiltrate, right? Barriers, you just put some barriers. It can be natural, live, or non-living materials. You just create some kind of wall, some kind of some kind of barrier to stop the movement or flow of water according to the slope, right? And then you plow in a way that you make water infiltrate more and more, because the purpose of tilling is making your soil more friable, but you do it across the contour line. So you need to know where your contour lines are when you are preparing or building an agroforestry systems, and you start utilizing the knowledge of the slope and go the way you should go to protect soil from moving out of the land. And that's the whole concept. And there are okay. So Chris told me to show you some examples. So I cannot, I don't have the time right now, but I put it here and I have an example so that when you get the slides, you can, it's pretty simple how you calculate the slope and distance and the runs. But I'm not going to talk about those because I'm going to talk about how you modify contours. Now, the key lines are also part of contours, but when you make key lines, you make sure that the distance between the key lines are same. A contour can have different distances between two lines because you don't know where the slope is. Key line is kind of targeted places. So you have to figure out where you can find parallel contour lines. That's key line is, so that you can create something, some structure to conserve more moisture, to hold more moisture, to catch more moisture. And also, when you have agroforestry, you have agriculture operation, and if you have a larger operation, you need some mechanical systems to harvest, to plant. And you can have these parallel moving key lines to give you enough space to move something. Okay, it's not too narrow at one point and not too, broad in another point. It's same, so you can ride tractors and planters and stuff. That's what keyline is. And different complication, depending on how complicated landscape you have, you might find lesser space or more space for key lines. But this is very important to map your area using key lines so that you can create structures and see some examples. Both of them are from Mexico, by the way. I couldn't find a lot of photos from the desert Southwest. So what I could do. So key lines are better than contour lines because key lines can help you create areas to conserve more moisture, to catch more water. Terrace is nothing but a flatbed using the contour technology, the contour engineering. It's a flatbed because some crops cannot grow on the slope. You need a flatbed like rice. So it's actually started in places in Asia where they're growing rice. So terrace is just a flatbed depending on contour lines, okay? See how we can do terracing. So you will have all these slides, so I'm going fast. Now, swales and berms, again, using the knowledge of the elevation, where you have the slope. What you do is you put a berm downslope so that water can come and kind of, start feeding the below ground because it cannot go there. It kind of start feeding like a plume here, and it will. And now here you have a moisture reserve, a soil water reserve here to grow anything you want, right? And you can have multiple berms as you see fit, because depending on elevation, where you are, how your landscape is. Okay, so but there are different, like you can see here, I wrote that there are different purposes of soils and berms, and you can see in flat land too, to catch pollutants and stuff. But the concept is you have the berm downslope to hold the water there for a longer time, so it can infiltrate in the downslope and reserve or conserve more moisture, or increase the reserve of water. So this is how you actually do it. In the desert, you can even plant trees here, because it will catch more moisture. When we are struggling with water, this is the area where you have more moisture, okay? So different purposes. Alley cropping is nothing but growing a crop in the alley of larger trees. We in Arizona, we have a lot of people growing different crops. Some of them call it cover crops because they're probably using it for forages and not like grains. But a lot of people are also growing grains. Like the next photo, both of them are cotton, but not from Arizona. I think both. So the right one is Florida, left one is, I think, Texas, or vice versa. Some of them, but kind of in an arid, but they have more precipitation though. So yeah, that is the big deal. cannot have carbon if you don't have water. For photosynthesis, you need carbon and water. So, you can do alley cropping and grow a cash crop in between trees and orchards that brings in the livestock integration, right? You see now alley cropping, cover crop, trees, agroforestry, and livestock integration, all in the same place. And there are systems here in Arizona that are doing it. Now, this photo, none of this photo is from those fields. We don't have that lush green, tall growing cover crops here. We don't have enough water. That's the problem. And the last thing is windbreaks, okay? We talked about water a lot, water conservation. We don't have water erosion that much unless you are in the elevation. But wind, we have everywhere. And to stop them, we do whatever we can do. It can't be just hedgerows like this, okay? Just stop the soil going out of the field and create an ecosystem here very close to these roots, which is a different microclimate. And you can be constructive, you can be creative, and you can grow different crops. Crop diversity comes in the picture, soil health, regenerative agriculture. Any kind of creative person, I think we should work with artists because some of these designs are so beautiful that you will feel like someone painted. With that, I'll end here. I'm sorry I took a lot of time, but if you have any question, I'll take. And I said I'll have to run, so I will not be here during lunch. But yeah, I'll take a question. No, not myself. But we have some people who work with BioCrest, but I am not. I never worked with them. No. Yes, it's not the name suggests. So there are thin layer of crust on top of the soil that looks like dead, but if you add water, they're alive, and it can be non-plant and plant materials growing on top of the soil surface, especially in a very extreme condition, extreme arid condition, when you don't have water, they make a crust because they cannot grow. But with little touch of water, they come back. So if you find, and if you just do any hikes anywhere, you will see a lot of biocrust. Just bring some part of it, put it in a beaker or a cup. You will see how lushy they become within a couple of days. And there is a lot of biodiversity there. That's where most of the microbial communities live, in the desert. That's all I know. I haven't done much research. Yeah.
For a culture guy, you work in some of the most arid areas in Jordan.
Uh-huh. Right. I probably listened to some of his podcasts. I mean, YouTube podcasts, but I'm not good with names. I'm sorry. Right. Um, by the way, I'm originally from India, so I've seen some of those driest climates. But yeah, I probably, because when you said Jordan, I probably listened to some of but some of my materials might be.
Okay, so let's say thank you to Debankur.